Chicken, beef, pork. That's the meat counter you've walked past your entire life. Now notice what's never on it. Rabbit. And that's strange because pound for pound, rabbit is the most efficient meat a human can raise. It turns a fistful of grass into dinner faster, on less land and less feed, than anything you actually put in your cart. You've just never been allowed to buy it. And it didn't lose by accident. It lost 5 separate times. And the last one is the only wall that was ever really about you. Start with the math, because the math is almost unfair. A mother rabbit can be pregnant again within a day of giving birth. She carries a litter for about a month, drops 6 to 12 young, and does it again and again, around 40 offspring in a single year from one animal small enough to sit on your lap. Those babies reach your plate in roughly 10 weeks. Now line that up against the cow whose sirloin you were reaching for. She spends 9 months pregnant, then close to 2 more years putting on weight, eats her way through a small field, and drinks her way through a small pond, and gives you a single calf at the end of it all. In the time that cow becomes a single freezer's worth of beef, one rabbit and her daughters could outproduce her several times over. And the meat isn't some compromise either. It's leaner than chicken, leaner than pork, leaner than beef, with more protein in every bite and almost none of the fat. On paper, you'd be a fool to farm anything else. So here's the thing nobody tells you. The paper is lying to you. Here's the first wall, and it's a weird one. Try to actually live on rabbit, nothing but rabbit morning and night, and it will quietly start killing you, even while your stomach is full. Arctic explorers ran into this a century ago and gave it a name: rabbit starvation. The problem is that rabbit is almost pure lean protein, and your liver can only process so much protein before it taps out, somewhere around 1/3 of your calories and no further. Push past that ceiling meal after meal, and the waste from all that protein floods your blood faster than your body can clear it. The old accounts describe men eating pound after pound of it and growing weaker by the day. You eat more, you get hungrier, you get weaker, and you can starve with a belly that's completely full. Every culture that leaned on rabbit knew this in its bones and always ate it next to fat, blubber, lard, butter, marrow. So wall 1 is real, but look how small it actually is. It only bites if rabbit is the whole meal, serve it beside almost anything, and the wall vanishes. Which is exactly how most of the world has always treated it. Rabbit isn't some daring, forgotten food. For most of human history, it was just ordinary. And it was ordinary in your own country more recently than you'd guess. Through the Second World War, with beef and pork rationed down to a trickle, both the American and British governments told families to raise their own rabbits in the backyard. Washington printed cheerful little how-to pamphlets. In Britain, whole neighborhoods started rabbit clubs, and for a stretch there, millions upon millions of ordinary people were eating rabbit every week without a second thought. Your own great-grandparents may well have kept a hutch out back. Then the war ended, and within about 2 decades that entire habit didn't just fade, it fell off a cliff. The very next generation would grow up finding the idea of eating one faintly disturbing. Something happened in that gap. 3 things did, actually, and each one stacked a wall higher than the last. Wall 2 arrived as a virus. In the 1950s, a disease called myxomatosis tore through Europe, something that had been deliberately released in Australia to cull the rabbits overrunning the place and then jumped continents. It worked with horrifying efficiency. In Britain, it erased somewhere around 99% of the wild rabbit population in about 2 years. But here's what it did to dinner. The disease is gruesome to watch. Swollen, blinded animals dying slowly in open fields. And the newspapers ran the photographs. A country that had just spent years happily eating rabbit was suddenly watching it suffer in close-up. And for a lot of people, the animal and the horror fused together and never quite came apart. It scarred the farming side too. Rabbits catch fast-moving diseases that can rip through a crowded shed in days and erase an entire operation almost overnight. But disease alone has never explained it. Chicken has its own plagues, and chicken still conquered the planet. Wall 3 is the tallest, and it's built out of something ridiculous. A cartoon. After the war, rabbits hopped off the dinner table and into the nursery. The rabbit became the soft first pet, the thing a kid keeps in a hutch, names, and cries over. And the stories showed up right on cue. A wisecracking gray one forever outsmarting the hunter. a mischievous one in a little blue coat, a wide-eyed baby one slipping around on the ice. A whole generation grew up cheering for the rabbit. Now here's the part that's wired straight into you. That face, the huge eyes, the round cheeks, the tiny nose, is almost exactly the layout of a human baby's face. And your brain is built to protect that shape before you can even think. It's the same reflex that makes you go soft at a puppy. Point it at a rabbit, and something in you quietly files the animal under family instead of food. That's why the refusal comes before the reason. Ask most people why they won't eat rabbit and they can't tell you, they just give you a flinch. Wall 4 is made of steel. Even with all the feelings stripped out, rabbit still had a machine problem. When chicken took over the world, it won because it's shaped for a factory. Uniform, sturdy, easy to run down an assembly line by the millions. A modern poultry line can clip birds past the workers at more than 2 every second. Nothing about a rabbit cooperates with that kind of speed. The rabbit is the opposite in every way. Small, oddly shaped carcasses, delicate bones, a body that fights being processed at speed. But the deeper issue is the animal's own nervous system. A rabbit is prey, tuned by evolution to assume everything nearby wants to eat it, and that wiring never shuts off. A loud enough noise, a rough grab, the wrong smell on your hands. And a rabbit can drop dead of pure fright, its heart just stopping. Farms have lost whole rows of them to a single thunderstorm. Now picture the racket of an industrial shed. The clatter, the machines, the constant handling, and you've basically engineered the exact place that scares this animal to death. Chicken shrugs all of it off. Rabbit can't. So the industry that fed the century got built around the bird. And the rabbit was quietly left off the blueprint. And yet, step outside the English-speaking world, and every wall you just watched go up simply isn't there. Walk into a French supermarket and rabbit is sitting in the case beside the chicken. Unremarkable, ordinary Tuesday food. China raises and eats more rabbit than the rest of the planet combined. In some regions, a spicy braised rabbit is street food you grab with your hands. In Spain, a proper paella isn't even considered right without rabbit in it. On the little island of Malta, a rabbit stew braised low and slow is close to the national dish. The meal families gather around the way yours might gather around a turkey. Same animal, same soft face, same viruses, same fragile heart, same awkward carcass. French brains melt at a bunny too. They simply never learned to move it from the plate to the pet aisle. And that's the tell. If rabbit were truly impossible to farm, or truly unbearable to eat, it would be missing everywhere. It isn't. It's missing in a few specific places for a few specific reasons, and only one of them ever really counted. So line the walls back up and watch which one actually holds. Take away the starvation. Every culture just ate around it. Take away the virus, the factory, the fragile little heart. France and China clear all 3 every single day without blinking. Knock down 4 of the 5 walls, and rabbit still isn't in your cart, which leaves exactly one still standing, and it was never made of biology or economics at all. It's made of a feeling, one that got handed to you before you were old enough to ask for a reason, somewhere around the first time you fell in love with a cartoon. Everything else is just the story we tell ourselves afterward to make that feeling sound like a choice. So let me actually ask you, could you eat an animal you'd want to name and keep? Be honest with yourself. And if rabbit was simply dinner where you grew up, Germany, France, somewhere with a grandmother and a good stew, tell me below where that was. I've got a feeling that map is going to surprise a lot of people.